time to do another Chinese giant monster movie, and we are looking at 2020's Big Octopus. Of course, that is the literal translation of this Chinese monster movie, 2020 film. And I've noticed with these kind of Chinese monster films that they tend to have a kind of a rash of similar films that kind of get released around the same time. You'll get a bunch of giant shark films, a bunch of kind of giant crocodile films, and we actually had a couple of giant kind of squid and octopus movies. There was one called Sea Monster, which is actually going to getting released in the US as Curse of the Kraken. So I wouldn't be surprised if more movies like this get kind of released and put out by American distribution companies and kind of repackaged, renamed, etc. So I'm not going to go through the kind of the Chinese name, the director, or any of the cast. I'll just butcher their names. So it'll just be embarrassing for everyone involved. Now, a trend with these Chinese monster films is to have loose adaptations of Western movies, although this one seems to be more of a somewhat kind of generic monster on the loose film rather than kind of a direct kind of adaptation, so to speak, of an existing property. What we have is a strange kind of lighter tone movie than some of them. So the premise is this: we have this kind of coastal area, and it primarily focuses on this kind of this guy who owns like a kind of a seafood restaurant, and he kind of goes out in his fishing boat and catches the fish and all this, and he unwittingly captures some strange kind of like octopus, and he brings it back, and his kind of scientist female friend takes an interest in it. There may well be something about its genetics that causes somewhat of an alarm. And this obviously attracts the unscrupulous minds of this kind of big business guy who wants this special kind of baby octopus for himself, but he's actually only the kind of the middleman. There's someone even worse behind him. And of course, in the sea, you've got Mummy Octopus who wants her baby back. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss what I think works with Big Octopus. Okay. So as I mentioned, this one is a lighter in tone movie than some of them. It does have a couple of more, air quotes, dramatic moments in it, but for the most part, this is a little bit more of a goofy film in some ways. Not a comedy or a spoof, although there are some elements here and some moments certainly where, it does kind of border on the kind of the ridiculous in certain aspects, but it certainly is a lighter tone overall. So some of you who want a kind of a light, fluffy kind of monster movie, not really gory in any sense, with kind of CGI kind of monsters, then you may want to check it out. But that being said, I do think this movie does have a little bit of a fun element. It's quite a fast-paced film with kind of lots of kind of action elements in it as well. We have this kind of our big bad guy, of course, is the Caucasian-looking bad guy. I actually think he's a Malaysian actor, but he kind of looks, not Chinese basically. And he's of course the big bad guy here, and he's got his henchmen, and there's lots of kind of gunfights and kind of fight sequences with humans, as well as these kind of like these giant octopus attacks and things like that. So there's actually quite a lot of kind of like going on in this movie, and it's not an overly long film, so it's relatively kind of fast paced. And one thing I did notice with this film that I thought really kind of stood out was the location shooting here. Now, of course, when you're shooting, off the coast of China or wherever this is kind of filmed, it has a certain kind of, quality that maybe we don't get, or we're not so much used to whilst watching kind of American or Australian or even UK produced films. So it does have this kind of tropical kind of feel to it, a little bit of a different kind of, look than some of the kind of the films we've seen. And there's been plenty of kind of Chinese monster movies that I've reviewed, but this one actually does have a few different kind of locales, which I thought was kind of quite good. It actually also has probably the most amount of English in this movie. We have our main bad guy is English speaking. Like I said, it's kind of like, I think he might be mixed race, but he kind of looks Caucasian, and of course that makes him the bad guy. And it's he speaks all of his lines in English. As does his kind of second in command, and there's even a couple of the main characters that will answer him in English. So you actually get certainly not the most, but there's actually a reasonable amount of kind of English dialogue in this movie. And I watched this with subtitles, so it wasn't like a dubbed version. And it's quite interesting actually kind of what, because they still have subtitles even in the English sequences, and they're very different to what's actually said. Like this bad guy's completely swearing and, you know, dropping loads of F-bombs, and the actual text is nothing like that. So I thought that was quite interesting. Maybe I'm reading, you know, maybe the Chinese translation isn't great on the actual Chinese characters either. Who knows? But yeah, there's quite a lot of action, and I think our protagonists, our main kind of characters, they're kind of likeable. They're somewhat kind of generic. You know, we have the kind of like the goofy kind of main guy who kind of finds his inner strength and all of this, and we have our, of course, strong kind of female lead who takes no crap from the guys, all that kind of stuff. Very kind of broad stereotypes and cliches in regards to the main characters, admittedly, but nonetheless they're still somewhat likeable, if not, you know, lackluster in characterization. The actual creature effects themselves, a little bit of a mixed bag. I'll come on to it again in what doesn't work. But there are some sequences here, particularly underwater, I think, where the tentacles and stuff do look okay. I have more problems than I do positives with the actual CGI and the kind of effects, but there are a couple of sequences where I kind of thought it was okay. And there's also a couple of really bizarre moments within this movie, mainly involving the baby octopus, which is truly weird. Yeah, so it's certainly a memorable scene, maybe not for the reasons that the filmmakers want though. So what doesn't work? So let me just continue with the actual creatures and stuff. And this tends to be a problem with a lot of these Chinese monster films. The CGI just isn't good in them. They never have been. I haven't seen one film where the CGI is good. They have varying kind of degrees of how bad it is, but they've never been good. And this one is no different. The CGI here isn't particularly good, and it's not even consistent. Yeah, I mean, the kind of the tentacles of this kind of octopus vary in size massively compared to what's kind of going on. We'll see some sequences where the width of these tentacles are like the kind of the size of like a double-decker bus, and then we'll see other sequences where they actually are able to impale a human and things like this. They vary massively in size depending on what the script wants the octopus to kind of do, and they don't really act like tentacles or arms of an octopus or anything like that, because they kind of look like more like independent kind of snakes that seem to be able to see out their tentacles and things like that. The internal logic here is kind of like, you know, not brilliant. And just the way they kind of are animated and move and stuff, again, you're wondering where this thing is kind of like attached to. How are they kind of independently attacking without actually the octopus actually kind of seeing what's kind of going on, things like that. It's a lot of kind of like B-movie kind of silliness in this movie. There's sequences even with we have our humans kind of fighting. For example, they're trying to kind of steal this particular octopus. There's the baby one at one point, and they're in a car getting away, but where it's kind of like beach hut, they're still fighting. Like, why are they still fighting? These kind of other guys have got away. Why are these other blokes just like pissed off or whatever? You know, who knows? There are some sequences, as I've kind of alluded to, that are a little bizarre, and you're thinking, oh my, you know, did I just see this? It's like, not in a kinky or anything like that way, just in a sort of like, this looks so stupid way. I don't want to spoil it for you, that is actually kind of part of the fun of watching it, but there are some quite poorly staged sequences that are silly in concept and poorly executed in regards to kind of the VFX and things like that. As I mentioned, the characters are cliches. They're kind of likeable, but they're just like the doofus kind of like main guy and the kind of the all business kind of woman, typical kind of like stock characters. They're okay, they're likeable enough, but they are broad stereotypes and don't really get much depth. But the acting, oh my god, the acting. There is some like, even with the English speaking actors here, there are some like eye-rollingly bad sequences here.
We found it!
Lynn, hurry up and verify it was born 75 years ago!
Sure, of course!
Overall, it's kind of a somewhat of a generic plot, no real kind of like surprises, no real kind of twists and turns. Everything that's going to happen that you think will happen. Then these movies tend to be very kind of like paint by numbers in regards to kind of plot and things like that. So should you watch it? It is a fun movie to a point. There is a lot going on. and it makes good use of the locations here. But the quality isn't brilliant. The characters are completely forgettable, and I don't think the actual octopus is a particularly enthralling kind of like creature to kind of go against, because you never really feel like you get a properly good look at it, or it's just kind of like tentacles and things. So it is a little bit of a below average film, but still somewhat of a fun watch if you're a creature feature fan. So I'll give this one a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.